This episode 189 of Frame and Reference. You're about to drop into a conversation between me, Kenny McMillan, and my guest, Catherine Goldschmidt, ASC BSC, DP of The Last of Us Season 2. Enjoy. Was there only two of you are the DPs? Just you and
That's right. Yeah. Me and Ksenia, we were alternating. So yeah. So she did 1, 3, 5, and 6, and I did 2, 4, and 7.
Gotcha. Dude, you're in the USC, the USC. You're in the ASC now.
ASC, I know. It's exciting.
How'd they were like, oh shit, we got an American got away. We gotta get her. Hold on.
Gotta track her down.
Yeah. The Brits got her first.
Yeah.
How was that like induction phase?
I mean, very exciting. Obviously, a little bit intimidating as well, but yeah, I had some great sponsors and lots of support, and honestly, yeah, it was very cool. And basically I got in right before the ASC awards this year. So it was nice because I was nominated, I got to go, and I got to be like, I'm in now, and everybody was like, yay. So that was cool.
Yeah. Who were your sponsors?
Amy Vincent was my main sponsor. She was my professor at AFI, and then I had some of my AFI classmates, Todd Van Hazel and Matthew Lloyd. And then
I've talked to Matt. He's cool.
Yeah. And then Fabian Wagner as well.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I keep getting people have mentioned Amy Vincent a bunch. I haven't spoken to her before, but I keep, for whatever reason, I keep confusing her with Saint Vincent. And so I'll tell people like, oh yeah, I know them. And then I'm like, no, hold on. Oh wait, no. I do not know their work.
It could be related, but
yeah. So what have you been doing between, did you just go straight from House of the Dragon to this?
The Last of Us? Yeah. That's basically what happened last year. Yeah. I had a little bit of time. I was actually in the middle of like buying a flat and moving, and so, but I did some remote Zoom calls and stuff, and then I showed up right after the Emmys, which were the weird delayed January Emmys. So that was last year, January last year. Yeah.
That's what I had to, a lot of times you talk to people and they're like, oh yeah, my director friend, how did they just see, oh, this chick worked on House of the Dragon, we can trust her, and you come kind of thing? Or was there like a more involved like vetting process?
Yeah, it seemed that way. It seemed like, because I had a meeting obviously with Craig and Neil and the producers, and yeah, it seemed like because I'd done 2 seasons of House of the Dragon, and the ASC award, the Emmy award nominations, like obviously very helpful.
Yeah.
And so it seemed, I don't know, seemed groovy. And then I got to meet with Ksenia actually, and that was great because she was wonderful, and she was very, each episode is kind of its own standalone thing, and you'll have tons of freedom, and it's a family experience. And anyway, she said all the right things. So yeah, and I'd obviously seen the show and loved the show. And
sure,
I was not a game player, did not play the game. I was very upfront about that. But I watched the game on YouTube before my meeting, and I thought it was very cool.
Yeah,
very cinematic. Yeah.
Oh, incredibly! I mean, the second game came out like right after, not right after, but like a few years after I had graduated college. So I played the first one. I didn't play the second one, but I knew the storyline and stuff. And I think that was one of the first games that I can remember that like. I'm probably putting my foot in my mouth for like other gamers, but in terms of like the look of it, the storytelling of it was actually a factor. It was like that and God of War, which came out in like 2016. I remember everyone going, God of War, I think got nominated for like a cinematography award somewhere.
Right.
Did I tell you about that? I feel like we talked about this last time.
Really?
God of War takes place in a one take.
All right.
The whole game is one take.
Wow.
There's only one.
That's
cut.
Cool.
And
that's amazing.
Awesome. Yeah, it's really cool. It's an interesting thing. But I actually did watching the whole season. it's not necessarily your episode that I'm thinking of, but in general, throughout the episodes, you guys do a really good. There are moments in it that are very of not that video game specifically, but video games in general. Like dialogue can be very gamey in like a good way, I feel, and also like certain shots and like talking about climbing obstacles and stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's. I don't know if this is. I didn't play 2, obviously, but I don't know if that's from the game, but it is of gaming, and I thought that was like a nice. Was that like a thing you guys talked about, like trying to make nods to the game?
Well, definitely there's definitely stuff in the show that comes directly from the game. And there's definitely stuff that we did where yeah, where Craig and Neil will be like, yeah, we want this to be really like the game. So whether that's in terms of production design and the set or in terms of how we shoot it. Um, but yeah, like I mean, I'll give you an example in episode 2, the part where Abby gets crushed by the fence and is sort of crawling along and there's all the infected sort of bearing down on her. That was yeah, really specific part of the game that people who played it, had this like visceral reaction to. And so, yeah, so I remember that being, very important that we replicate that feeling. And so, yeah, so there was a lot of focus on like how to get that feeling as claustrophobic as possible, how to get the camera to be able to be in that sort of tiny space with her, leading and following and that sort of thing. So anyway, I can tell you how we did it. It was like
Yes,
okay. So yeah, so everybody had to sort of like come to the table and do a little test to see like exactly how low can the fence go that lets Caitlin still, because she was obviously going to be doing this herself,
right.
Still crawl through. And then how big was that hole and what kind of a, camera situation could we do? And so in the end, what we came to was it was a Ronin 4D on a Filmotechnic makes this very lightweight portable telescopic arm on an F-27, and we could take it off the base and we could lay it right on the snow, and then we could be able to pull the camera back, push the camera forward, and the whole clearance was something like, I don't know, 14 inches or something off the ground. So yeah, it was cool. It was great.
What camera were you shooting on?
So it was the Ronin 4D. So that's the whole.
Sorry. I just immediately heard the gimbal. I forgot that's a camera.
Yeah, it's a camera too.
Yeah, that's cool. That camera is getting. It's so crazy because like, ostensibly that's a prosumer camera, but it's popping up on so many more film, like at like real TV and film set. Like obviously, Civil War was a famous one. I think Adolescence is using it.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So I had used it for like a horse riding point of view shot on House of the Dragon and just thought, oh my God, this is amazing. So that's, I just immediately thought of it as soon as we were just trying to like get smaller and smaller and smaller. And yeah, it performed incredibly well.
Don't you have to do something a little wacky if you have, what was your lens package? Because usually I feel like if it's too heavy, the gooseneck gets a little floppier with it. Or
yeah, so we were shooting the rest of the show, let's say, is shot Alexa 35 and these Cook S4s that Ksenia actually had Air Rental modify so that the iris is like a perfect circle. So those were very nice, very special. So yeah, so I mean, I had to switch the lensing for that shot, but Cook makes I'm not going to remember what they're called. Is it like SP3s? Yeah, that's what they are. Yeah. So we use those.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've seen some people do tests between the SP3s and like some of the other Cooks, and it's like I could totally see that working because it's not exactly like a S4 or anything, but it is close enough. I think the coloring was even pretty close. Like one of them might lean a little cooler, but that's about it. Probably the SP3.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, for like how much is going on in those shots and the duration of them, and you know what I mean? It's sort of, I think you get away with a lot, actually.
Yeah. And honestly, like I was thinking about this the other day, like for the longest time, we were trying to solve for dynamic range. And now that's almost purely taken care of. And even if it's not, all you have to do is just manage it in your frame. Oh no, my camera only does 10 stops. It's like, oh, figured out. Like Yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah. Well,
old
that
film used to be
yeah,
6.
yeah. I mean, that's the other thing. I knew it was day exterior. Like I wasn't too worried about that. We did actually put it side by side with our 35 at the start of the show just to, because I also wasn't clear if I was going to use it again for night work and stuff like that. And
Oh, sure.
and and I decided not to. But for that, yeah, it was totally fine.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to Chase, who's the like product specialist for Ari, a
Mm.
couple of weeks ago, and at the ASC clubhouse, weirdly enough, I was doing they're filming something, and I was like, hey, I got to do a podcast in like 5 minutes. Can I just use your office? And he was all right. So, but Ari has the craziest, like, this is probably too nerdy, but Ari's approach to camera making so interesting because like the Alexa, they were like, oh, no display can display more than 12 stops, so we'll just film for that. And then now the
Mhm.
35 was like, oh, HDR and modern displays can now show about 16, so they're like, that's our new target.
Mm.
And obviously
Mm.
4K because of Netflix and everything. But it's like, I've never heard of any camera manufacturer just going like, how do we future proof it in the most like German way possible, right? It's like, oh, what's the standard? All right, we just beat that. That's problem solved.
Yeah, exactly.
That
Exactly. Why
A35 is
not?
really nice. I've never used it,
Yeah.
but
I mean, the thing is, so yeah, I've used on my past three jobs now, and yeah, if you're doing like a side by side camera shootout and you're interested in like, preserving, like for example, on episode 2, again, like there was a lot of concern about like how much detail we'd see in all the flame work, and especially because all that's outside, when you're already in a day exterior environment already in the snow. And I felt pretty confident that that camera would be able to handle it. We shot some tests, and it's very impressive.
you can't blow it out. It's the most insane highlight retention I've ever seen of any
Yeah.
camera.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what I did do, I did, and I think maybe, I forget if I'd done this on Ask the Dragon or not, but I did rate it at 1600 just to give a little extra in the highlights. Um, so I did do that, but yeah.
I can't remember when I learned that trick. It was like last year or something. But when I finally understood how ISO works, even though I had seen a chart a million times, I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
it gets bright outside, raise the ISO. Because that's not your first thought, right? You always go dark ISO, blah, blah, blah. But
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's counterintuitive, and it means you have to, wear a lot of ND a lot of the time.
yeah.
But I actually like working with a Rota ND, which I always have to
Oh,
get the camera assistants into that idea. But
right.
once we have that, then instead of writing the iris on the handset, we're writing the filter. And so then you can just pick a stop and stick with it.
Hmm.
And it's just a lot more flexible. The sun comes out, it goes in. It's like it's an English trick.
Gotcha. It's an English trick. The you should
in,
try
in,
just
in a cloud in a cloudy country. Yeah.
oh yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
oh, they must love the Sonys over there then. That like that electric ND that you can just ride the little wheel on the side.
Oh, definitely.
Do
Yeah,
you
yeah.
do you not find like which one did you use? Because every time I refuse. Obviously, I'm on a much lower end than you, but I always just make sure
Mm,
I have internal NDs anytime I buy a camera, rent it, or
mm.
whatever. But the thing that I always avoided about VNDs was just the obviously you get that weird Xing pattern at a certain point. And like a lot of times the coloration is really bad. So like what's a good one?
Yeah, good question. And we definitely did test a bunch to find the good ones.
Mm.
And it was tricky because we had, like to shoot the battle sequence, for example, we had 5 cameras. And I remember it was like getting tricky to match all the filters. Um, but yeah, to actually remember what they were, I'd have to go back and look. But yeah, I mean, once you find one that works for you. The only thing that did happen is like because it's two filters, two polarized filters, like you can get, and I mean, you've seen the episode, like there's so much snow and crap in the air everywhere, and we're in these like crazy conditions. So we got sometimes stuff stuck between them, and that was
Oh,
bad. So that we had to keep we had to keep them clean because otherwise, yeah, then everything goes wrong.
Yeah. So I mean, it probably stands to reason that you would get unless something happens in 7, I'm unaware of, like the largest battle scene of the season. How was your experience from obviously like House of the Dragon and stuff kind of informed that? Obviously your familiarity with like VFX and like what they might need and stuff like that. But like, was there any other kind of like, oh, I'm actually prepared for this kind of stuff with that one? Also,
It's
the
funny.
heaviest,
Yeah.
not the heaviest, but you got the episode, which probably wasn't was probably a little stressful.
Well, that's just it. I mean, like we had this great big battle we had to prepare for, which obviously takes, a lot of planning and coordination and all the rest of it. But we also had, the death of Joel
Right.
and we had to shoot Joel dying our first week of shooting,
Oh no.
which was just like
Yeah.
absolutely brutal for everybody involved. Um, so yeah, anyway, I can talk a lot about either one. Um, but as far as like my experience on House of the Dragon, I shot some action stuff, but to be honest, yeah, it was nothing at this
Really?
scale.
Okay.
Yeah, like anyway, yeah, definitely yes. This
So
was
you're
this
allowed
was
to rant. This is the I don't know if you remember, but this is pretty chill. No one's here to listen to my ass.
Rant. Okay. Well, I mean, let's talk about the Joel stuff first, actually,
Sure. Yeah,
because
yeah.
I do feel like the battle can go on and on, but the Joel stuff we felt, I mean, that's just like the heart of the whole episode, and so Mark
And
Mylod, the
the
director, and
game in
I,
general to some
yeah,
degree.
100%, and so we were really wanting to get that right. Um, Now, one thing that I hope you cannot tell is that we were shooting that in a real location with
Mhm.
changing weather outside those big windows.
Oh no, I didn't.
So
Yeah.
even though, and it was one of those things where like so much of the episode is day exterior, so much of the challenge is to sell this snowstorm throughout, so many days of the schedule. And obviously, yeah, the weather's going to change all the time. But to be shooting an interior scene and be that weather dependent was was definitely like just more challenging basically. So yeah, so that's a real location where those, 2-story windows actually sit, a whole story up off the ground, and the ground is sort of sloping away, and then there's woods. And so, so it was, and it's south facing. The south
Perfect.
facing, yeah. So, so my like and we were in there a week to do all the work we had to do, and I really just wanted, to give Mark and the actors like as much freedom and flexibility and time to do what they had to do. So it was a sort of, it was a thing basically to be able to convince, the line producer that actually we really did need, even though this is an interior scene, I really did need to get the large grip, like
Right.
construction crane and 40 by 60 outside this big window, because there was no other way to
Damn.
control the sun and no other way that we could just keep shooting. Because yeah, that sun just poured like straight into that room. If and that was the only way to deal with that. So that was exciting to
Yeah.
get that
So
over the line when everybody else is trying to just put all the money into, the visual effects and the big battle and all the stuff.
right.
And it's like, what? You have to spend money, you have to spend that much money on this.
What's a 20
But
ton grip truck? Who put this down?
yeah.
So what were you just like just big ass diffusion, hope for the
it
best?
was
Or?
a it was a black. We were just trying to
Oh.
kill all the sun. All the
Oh,
sun
because then
had
you
to
just have a
go.
shit ton of bounce coming in from the snow anyway. So it's
And not only that, well, there wasn't actually, I mean, it was funny when we scouted the place, there was real snow out there. But when we showed up, there was snow one day and then it all melted the next day. So that was the other problem. It was just like, oh my God, like, because the whole point of shooting on location is to avoid copious amounts of visual effects.
Right.
And that's why they had made that decision before Mark and I began. But in the end, because the weather changed so drastically, and we had to, that was the other thing, like, Mark is so wonderful with the actors. He's very protective of, shooting in an order that's going to prioritize their performances and not doing anything that will
Right.
be screwy for that, just for in terms of light or anything like that. So it wasn't like, anyway, so we didn't change the plan as far as, shooting order or anything, even though we knew what the weather report said was going to happen. So
And
we just,
you're
yeah.
in Whistler?
So anyway, for that location, that was not Whistler. I can't remember where that was.
No.
Someplace outside of Vancouver, where we were hoping it would snow, and it did snow, and then it didn't. So yeah, so it was tricky. And in the end, they did have to do some visual effect work outside the windows, obviously, but I had to make sure that there was no sun coming in ever.
Yes.
So yeah, that was kind of like the mantra for the whole thing, like no sun.
Right. We can get away.
Kill the sun. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so that has to be a tough scene too, because I mean, obviously emotionally, but like it's borderline a black box theater. There's just nothing in it. It's just some walls and some wood floor, and then the world's largest window. And it's like,
Totally.
you're handed that, and you're like, I don't even get production design to help.
Well, yeah, because if we had built the set, we would have shaped that room slightly. Like, it's a very awkwardly shaped room,
Yeah.
and especially for that many actors and what that action was. And we had 3 cameras, so it was, it was challenging. But I think, anyway, I'm thrilled that that it all worked, obviously, and very relieved, because it was, it was definitely like starting with the meat, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah. But anyway, so that's what that was. And and I had to make the production designer, because basically, like, I knew with this 40x60 we could basically track the sun. I feel like there was sort of one corner where we had to get in another machine just for when the sun got low, so we could block the sun, but there was still so much ambient that would come in these massive windows. And so again, like, just to work quickly, I begged the production designer, would they please install these like blackout blinds that we could just control.
Sure.
And he was like, you can, I just don't ever want to see them in the picture. And so we tried our very, very hardest to never frame them, but every once in a while I see one and I'm like, I'm sorry, Don. Sorry about that.
And VFX is like, no, I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not
exactly. But yeah, VFX is like, we've done our share on this episode. Yeah.
It's part of the
but
scene
I'm
now.
sure
You guys did this to yourself.
Yeah. Nobody notices it except for us. But yeah.
I did notice the whole, like, overall the show, obviously, except for like some of the interiors and the more dramatic, like Spore Room, for instance, towards the end of the season. But the lighting in most of these exteriors feels very, I suppose, hands off would be a word, and not like it slapped together or anything, but it just feels very kind of like lightly seasoned, if you will. And I was kind of wondering what the general approach was between you and I wrote her name down, but I fucking
Ksenia,
Ksenia, yeah, there you go. There we go. Make that look like a real letter. Like how you guys talked about doing, obviously a lot of the show takes place outside, doing those exteriors, and also like if there was any kind of different approach from the first season.
Good question. I'm trying to remember what some of our early conversations were like about that. I mean, I think they definitely wanted to continue some stuff from the first season. First of all, the handheld look, I think, was really important to continue, because that sort of like grounds it a little bit more in reality. And just the fact that they want to shoot scenes with 3 handheld cameras, and they want the freedom to have those cameras be able to move around and follow the actors. And that fact alone means that you're definitely lighting spaces and and making, and trying to come up with 360 solutions, because all the sets are built, for 360. And so it really is just like wanting to create this environment where actors, can play. And as far as the day exterior work goes, I mean, again, it's like, the production design and the set dressing in some of these exteriors is tremendous. And so you just want to be able to, show that off really. Um, and yeah, I would say the style is very naturalistic. And that, and that's to sort of, again, keep it feeling grounded, keep it feeling real, and not too precious, not too pretty. Although some things are very beautiful, but like there's this sort of like ugly, beautiful aesthetic going, I would say, just definitely in terms of the design of everything. But I think that, sort of seeps a little bit into the photography sometimes too.
Sure. So there wasn't any like some poor grip Hollywooding like a bounce all the time or anything. You just kind of let it play.
Well, I mean, I am trying to remember. I mean, it just depends on what the scene is. You know what I mean? Like for the big battle stuff, and indeed, actually, like so much of the snow work and up the mountain, like you didn't have to put a bounce in because there's a lot of light bouncing around the place. You're more often than not putting down blacks on the ground just to like try to have some contrast. So that was the approach, I would say, for the for episode 2.
Yeah, because I guess you guys lucked out. You don't have a lot more snow work after that. Times to change.
Yeah. Spring comes and then we're done with the snow. So yeah, but we definitely got a lot of snow in episode 2. But yeah, for example, in episode 4, like there's that scene that we shot out on Nanaimo, which is an island actually off the coast of Vancouver. Or yeah, it's on Vancouver Island, I should say. And we took over their whole main street, and that's where Ellie and Dina sort of ride on their horse and see they find the tank.
Yep.
And that was a scene that we shot over the course of 2 days. The weather was beautiful. But I was trying to not have them be in direct sun because I did want it to look nice. I'll admit it.
You know what? I wrote a note here in the what I will call the guitar center. There's 2 things. One, it's very video game. It feels like you plucked it out of one of the games. But when she walks upstairs and there's that hole in the wall, I was just like, bro, come on. Like it's like if a DP designed a shot, it would be that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that, like you say, that's directly from the game 100%.
Oh, is it? Okay,
and my
cool.
it is. And Kate Herron was my director on that episode, and she loves the game and is a huge game player. And as soon as she found out that we had that scene in our episode, she was like, oh my God, we have to do it exactly like the game. And so we definitely watched that scene again and again and tried to make all of our choices be like the game. So yeah, that's an example where we were very attached to what the game was. Yeah.
Sure. And then was that location or was that set?
No, that was a set. That was quite a cool. It was actually a 2-story set. Don McCauley, the production designer, built it all in one. Much to the producer's chagrin.
I was going to say, I wouldn't have expected the first floor to actually be also part of the same building.
Yeah. So it was all one, and we did do a shot that connects it so that we could show off that fact. But of course, in the edit, it all gets chapped, so it's hard for people to appreciate that. But yes, it was all one big set that we did light and shoot as one.
Yeah. So what was the what else is nice too is like all of the overgrowth that takes place in all these places must be like really nice to shoot. It's just, giving literally everything a nice texture that's dim is like,
it's amazing. And the greens department is so phenomenal. I do not know how they do it, honestly, because we would show up and it would be done. Right. That main street in Nanaimo is a perfect example. Like they took over the entire street and greened it. Like,
Yeah.
it's amazing.
The that episode is a real kick in the nuts emotionally too, because it's yeah, that's a tough one. What a yeah, that's a charged one. The I noticed too. Oh, also, I love fuck. What's his name? He came on screen and I went Bernard, from Westworld. The actor Jeffrey Wright.
Jeffrey Wright.
I
Yeah,
was
he's
really
amazing.
excited to see him.
Yeah, yeah. No, he's amazing. We loved working with Jeffrey. Um, yeah, that scene in the kitchen
Brutal.
was like so brutal, and it was a Saturday, and we had to, work with a different unit, and I had to, tell them like, I'm really sorry, we're gonna do a Saturday where we're just gonna watch somebody being tortured, and I'm sure people would rather be somewhere else. And but actually, like, because Jeffrey's such an incredible performer, people were just thrilled to be able to see him do his thing, basically. And the other actor in that scene, being the tortured person,
Poor
was
guy.
also, I mean, yeah, that's the thing. I was so impressed, really, because yeah, heavy.
No, because I never really get to, like, the last thing I saw Jeffrey Wright in was American Fiction. Very
Yeah,
lovable character in there, and then in this one he's just like, yeah,
yeah,
fuck off, so
totally.
aggressive. Um, what was I got? Sorry, I got distracted because I was really excited to see him. But yeah, Climb Moon did that. Oh, this is just a note, so I'm just gonna bring it up. But this is what I was gonna say. But obviously, there's a lot of flashlights. Everyone's got a flashlight. How are you? This is such a stupid question, but whatever. Like, are you having to gel the flashlights? Like, do special lighting? Like, how are you guys handling that? Because otherwise,
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
why I
no,
thought about
totally. No, we do. We have to gel the flashlights. Um, so, and actually, for the shrewd observer, you'll see that, that changes depending on what the scene is. I mean, I wound up picking a certain combo that suited my needs. Like, basically, what I really needed the flashlights to do in episode 4 was actually reach into that subway tunnel.
it.
And I knew that even though we could play on their backs and swap them out for something more powerful, like, I really wanted it to just all be one thing, because then we could, it just makes shooting one way, shooting the other way. Like I said, we want to be 360. We want to
Right.
just keep going. We want to just have it flow. So that was sort of my limiting factor that I worked backwards from, as far as, because I think, anyway, yeah, you're picking the ND you want, and you're picking the color you want, and you're also working, with the props department if you need more punch. And I think in the case of episode 4, I was trying to punch them up some more, just so that just so that we could really be finding the space through that flashlight.
Yeah, well, and the when Dina's holding up Ellie, while she's or whatever. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed how you let that just veil out, and just like
Yeah.
obscure her, because that's obviously way more interesting and scary. I
Yeah.
thought that was a good choice.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Thanks. Yeah. No, that was actually, I mean, I have to say, like, Craig writes some of that stuff in the script.
Oh.
So I'm pretty sure, I'm trying to remember now whether that specifically was in there, but he's also on set, and we're also sort of, like, riffing on that stuff sometimes. And, because then she picks up the lantern, she's watching
Right.
the lantern.
Yeah.
That was definitely in the script. And, and the first time she did it, Craig was like, oh, well, do you think she could hold it higher? Like, would that look dumb? And I was like, that happens in every movie.
Can I
Why
get in
not?
frame, please?
Yeah. Everybody always holds their lantern right next to their face,
Yeah.
because obviously that's how you.
It's like in
how you hold a
sci-fi
lantern.
movies, you'll see like people with space helmets on, and there's just like a string of LEDs pinging them in the eyeballs, and they're like wandering out, like, I can't see shit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When you wear a helmet, of course you want to blind yourself. Yeah.
Every time I wear sunglasses, I make sure the sun is on this side,
Yeah.
um how much of that subway set was built out?
All of it. It's all in camera.
Jesus.
I know. I know. It's crazy. John McCauley did and his team phenomenal job. So it that set is built into this super long, thin building in Vancouver that used to be a printing press. I think it used to be like a like where they made some newspaper. I forget which one. Um, so yeah, all the tile is that's what the room is. So they built the tunnel into this place. So we didn't have it was all set. There was no, the set wall is here and then here's where we put our carts or whatever. The whole thing was one big set, which was a little bit like, oh God. Um, so and that's a real train that they got into this room
Yeah, how geez.
which was intense as well, because once that train was in it wasn't ever going out again.
Right.
So so as far as like the order of things, like I definitely had to hang whatever lighting I wanted to hang in there first, and the ceilings are incredibly tall.
Oh, so you could get something up there?
Oh yeah, we could definitely, yeah, we wound up rigging, it was all sky panels basically. It was sky panels and I picked, I always am bad at remembering. I think it was like quarter charcoal gray or something that would sort of make it feel, because everybody, nobody wants it to feel lit, right? Like
Right.
you need a base layer, because when they first come in and they're not shining their flashlights in there yet, you still need, it can't be black, you have to see something. um and so this was my sort of solution to try to, yeah, have very low level ambience that also wasn't, hanging off of anything shiny like the subway cars or,
Right.
so that's what we did, sort of down the whole tunnel.
I can't.
And then,
Maybe it was
yeah,
you or someone else, but one of y'all told me about the using charcoal as like diffusion trick. Maybe it was you like 2 years ago whenever we last talked. But it's such a smart idea, and I never would have thought of it. Or bounce even for that matter, or like bouncing off necks sometimes or whatever.
yeah. Well, we did it on the House of the Dragon season 2 specifically because of the wigs and wanting to sort of like kill some of the reflection off all the wigs. Um, and I just carried it with me because I mean, I think I really like it, for, stuff that you want to feel not lit, but
Yeah.
you do have to light. Um, so, and then obviously there's all the flares that come into that scene, and there's a lot of discussion, a lot of testing ahead of time about what the flares could be, what they should be, because basically, it turns out that health and safety, in Vancouver was theoretically happy for us to burn flares in this enclosed space that didn't have really any actual mental,
Yeah.
it wasn't a real stage. It didn't actually have like a, venting system or anything. But so yeah, in theory, they were happy, but we were like, I bet that's not really going to fly at the end of the day because they are very smelly.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, so so anyway, in testing, we were sort of testing out like how long we could withstand that. But then we were also just trying to match the color, the quality, the flicker of the light using other units. And so in the end, again, we were collaborating with the props department to make these prop flares, so that, yeah, they actually looked like the flares but had our LEDs on the end. And then we could, control those really easily, intensity and flicker and
So you guys
all
had
that
to
stuff. But
build LED flares?
we built LED flares.
That's kind
Exactly,
of
because
cool.
they were easier for, if they were in shot, which they were, it was easier for VFX to just turn them into a real flare later than if I had just stuck, something else in there like
Right.
Nastera or whatever. When we weren't seeing them, we could do, Asteras, we could do sky panels. But when we were seeing them, then they had to actually be an easier thing to switch over and become a flare in post. So yeah, so they were wired, so we couldn't actually throw them, and also the throwing of them would break them.
Yeah.
So we did for for the actual like throwing of the flares, those are all real flares. But then yeah, I mean the actors were really, they did not want to be breathing that in. They were, so it was all these
Sure.
LED ones that we made. Yeah.
Well, and also again, the stupid nerdiest thing in the world, but I know for a fact the A35, the original Alexa has a hard time with like really saturated bright reds. And I know the A35 they
Mm.
fixed it. So good
Yes.
choice.
Yeah. Totally. No, it was great. Yeah, that was great. I mean, it was still, it was still like hard going that scene because, everything in the actual train car, we were running down the length of the train car with the camera. So we're seeing the entire train car. And how it makes sense for the light to be in that space obviously is on the outside, right? Because they've thrown the flares around on the outside. So it should just be, red from outside. But what happens, practically speaking, is you have your lights outside and then a ton of infected come and stand in the windows. So that there goes all your light source.
Wonderful.
So, so, so we had to sort of like, anyway, try to just like squeeze it in where we could. And then yeah, obviously they're carrying flashlights, which gives you some excuse to have that kind of lighting bouncing around the place in the tunnel. I mean, in the car, but there's literally no place to put it because you're rushing down this train car and you're seeing everything. So the only place I could put anything was on the camera. So we put those little aperture, I forget what they're
MC.
called, but yeah, exactly.
These things.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we put so every camera had its own little camera light. Um
And
because
that was just for a little bit of exposure, or was it more like an highlight
exactly
type
that
thing? Oh.
it was a little bit of an eye light, but again, depending on sort of where they were in proximity to the camera, we could be right in the level of it.
Right, with the app.
And
You can do that. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, it was all on my dimmer board operator was
Right.
just was right in that. And then the other tricky thing in there is there's all those sponge shots, which, again, it's like it's too enclosed and not safe to be using any kind of blank.
Right.
But visual effects needs to be able to do that lighting effect
That's
later.
so tricky.
So anyway, those little aperture MCs were great because we could flash those as well and just give them like the exposure that they needed, and then obviously they made it look slightly better, but but yeah.
The even in like the first John Wick, for instance, there's a scene specifically where it's unfortunately pretty apparent that they're adding the flashes later, and it's not even the muzzle flash itself that looks bad. It's not bad, but is noticeable, maybe for just nerds like me. But it's it's that environmental pop that is really hard to do after the fact. So it's really smart to just use that's a great idea.
Yeah, especially when the whole scene is so dark, wants to be so dark. So yeah, those were some of the challenges in there.
Sure.
And the whole car is like shaking. And anyway, I was always very impressed with Robin Smith, who did the camera, because I obviously put him in some hairy spots. But yeah, so
He's like, you don't want to do this one? No.
Yeah, I don't know whether like shaking train car or sliding down the mountain. I mean, the thing is, he loves it. Like he was psyched to do all this stuff. But yeah, it's definitely like a very physically demanding show for the operators.
Well, I think it was on your Instagram the other day. You posted the like just where you were just like absolutely Canada goosed out or something. Like, was that you?
Oh yeah. That was. I mean, it was cold. I mean, we were so this mountain we shot up in. We went to Alberta for 8 days to shoot everything that needed, maximum snow and mountain. So basically not the Jackson High Street, right? Because everything in Jackson is a set build that is outside of Vancouver in a place called Manatee Bay. But everything that's like when Caitlin's up on the mountain looking down, and then she slides down and then gets chased by the infected and all that stuff we had to do. And yeah, so it was quite something to bring because they did also do some shooting for episode 1 up this mountain, and then a lot of the horde stuff is all second unit. So we had 3 units shooting on this mountain, and they told us that on the same mountain it's often used as a film location. So they shot Inception up this mountain, they shot Revenant.
Sure.
Yeah,
it does look like the Inception mountain. That's fun.
It is the Inception mountain. Yeah. So, but supposedly we brought like 600 people or something. Like, we were bigger than all these enormous films.
Yeah, I guess 3 units. Yeah.
3 units, and all the infected and all the hair and makeup people that have to make the infected look how the infected look, and all that. It's really like intense. Production value all up this mountain. So, but it was amazing because every morning you'd show up and everybody would get into their snow cats. And I tell people it was like Mad Max on snow or whatever in the mornings, like everybody getting into their little vehicles. And it was incredible, but it was cold. And the actors, I think the only way they managed was because they had these amazing, like, electrified long underwear under their clothes, which is, I had to buy some electric socks, and so anyway.
I run these like college ski trips every winter, snowboard. And I'm pretty good at, like, after whatever 30 years of snowboarding, I've gotten pretty good at like exactly the right amount of base layer for standing or riding. Because obviously you're snowboarding, you're exerting yourself a lot, and like the math you have to do to be like, okay, don't wear cotton because that'll hold the sweat, and then you get freeze to death, and then like all this other, like, wilderness learning that I thought I'd never need. I don't go camping.
Well, the costume department was really helpful. They were like, yeah, you need to buy wool underwear. It's like, I didn't know you could, but cool.
Yeah, Helly Hansen makes a really great base layer that's like super thin, and you almost don't feel like you're wearing it, but it like keeps you warm. I could do an hour on just like snow textiles.
Yeah, seriously. And just, I mean, I cannot say enough amazing things about just everybody who went up that mountain and came down it every day. And, because it's 10 times as hard to do what we have to do in the snow. And, like where Caitlin first goes on patrol and is on the lookout point, that was a part of the mountain where when they first took us around, we were trying to find all the spots. And so they took us up as high as they thought it was possible to go. And of course, Mark Mylod looks up further and is like, what about up there? Like, how do we get up there? And the mountain guys were like, oh, okay, well, leave it with us, like, come back. Like, we had to go away, like back to Vancouver and come back. And when we came back, they had like installed this whole rope course to get there. But literally that was the only way to get there, like hand over hand up the mountain. We could only take 15 people because of, avalanche concerns. And also there just wasn't a lot of space up there. And so that's how we did that, was literally everybody, carried what they could carry and went up this mountain.
That's great. Yeah, Av control is another huge, like, that weirdly enough is one of those things that doesn't like freak me out. But as a kid, hearing them do Av pops, like basically they just throw fucking bombs into the side of the mountain and go boom. So you'll wake up in the morning just hearing, and that can be.
Yeah. Well, they did it for us every morning, actually. So we'd gather at the base, we'd have our little safety meeting, and they would be off doing their avalanche control stuff. And it was quite something.
This is
awesome.
Apropos of nothing, but when I went to France to run a trip, and they have these tubes set up in the side of the mountain, and they're connected to like compressed air canisters, and they'll just blow. Instead of using dynamite, they'll just blow. They're aim bound. They're massive, and they just it's fun. What were I assume, like, the cameras are built like rocks, but what were some of the other like challenges of shooting in that inclement weather beyond like obviously cold, and then making sure I assume battery life took a huge hit.
Yeah, it's funny. Somebody recently asked me how we dealt with that, and I was like, "Oh, I have to ask my first AC Luke Towers because I
Sure.
actually don't remember what they did." But Luke tells me they had this whole sort of modular, like heating. I don't actually think it wasn't electrified, but it was just, yeah, it was like a modular
Insulated box
blanket,
or
let's
something.
say insulate, yeah, that they just sort of wrapped the camera in but could still access where they needed to. And that, kept the heat in basically so that the cameras could keep running. Um, so that was good. So yeah, we didn't, I mean, honestly, the crew was so good. I don't remember ever needing to, wait for anything to warm up or for,
Well, and
like so, yeah,
to be fair, you're probably
miraculously, yeah.
well. I was gonna say you're probably busy with other things. I doubt with any problem. Catherine, the battery died. Yeah, who cares? They're like, we'll fix it. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we did have, because there's tons of rain. I'm sure you noticed in episode 4, and not to spoil anything for 7, but lots of rain in 7.
Mm.
So we were wearing rain spinners all the time, and we did have problems with those. I seem to recall. Um, but anyway, it
Yeah.
happens.
If you
And we
had a preference,
just,
would you choose rain over snow or no?
I love the snow shooting, actually. I mean, we knew it was just quite contained within episode 2. Um, but no, I loved it. And there was something else that I did just because we discovered it in testing. Because my biggest fear was the sun, on this episode. And when we were up the mountains, I could do nothing about it. We could take no machines, we could take no big solids, it was too windy for, any kind of inflatable cloud, like nothing. And so we just had to pray basically, and we got very, very lucky. Um, but what I did, because we were sort of testing ahead of time, like different storm levels with like what special effects could give us and their smoke and snow and wind and all that stuff. Um, and so I looked at these night fog filters in testing just because, yeah, we had looked at, I'm remembering, yeah, the VFX supervisor, Alex Wayne, he had sort of, yeah, gone on YouTube and found all this like actual footage of like people
Oh,
going out into a blizzard and, shooting with their camera. And obviously, like the lens gets fogged and snow all over it and this and that. And so, I said to him, like, well, do you think I should, have something in my back pocket that would replicate this sort of thing in camera,
yeah.
or do you think you want to, just be adding layers of this stuff in post? And so we tested, and he was like, you know what, I think you should, why not have those in your back pocket? Because, if suddenly the wind blows the wrong way and all the smoke that, special effects is trying to like blow into this thing is not there or whatever.
Right.
And so I had a couple sets, and in the end, I honestly wound up using them more like a low con filter,
It is called
just so
night
that
fog.
they're called night fogs. Yeah. So
Oh.
I think Tiffin makes them. They're pretty new. They were new actually because Ari had to, I think, buy some so that I could
Oh,
have
because you
them.
were renting. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, because we were through Area Rentals. Um, and yeah, what's awesome about them is like, especially for shooting exterior, white snow, there's no highlight blooming, right? So they're sort of adding this sort of gentle, you know, fog layer without that kind of, gross and weird,
Right.
diffusion-y. The diffusion-y look was not the vibe. The vibe was just like
Locon.
how, yeah, yeah, they were in the end, that's basically how I used them. And they were really useful that way because we used them a lot on the Jackson High Street. We did have some control there because that was a backlot set.
Mm.
There was a lot of discussion about, how to have that for the right money. So for example, like the first, when I read the script and they'd already started building the set, we went to see the set, and I said to the key grip, Spike is his name, Spike Tashra, I was like, oh, well, do you think we can do what they did on Memoirs of Vacation? Just like silk the whole set, can we do that? And he was like, and anyway, and so like bless them, like, I actually um yeah, it's a long-winded story, but Dion Beebe had done like a sort of masterclass during the pandemic over Zoom with the cinematography group that I'm a part of. So I was able to write to him and be like, hey, like, how did you guys do that? And he put us in touch with, I think, their rigging grip maybe. And so he got on a Zoom call with my whole grip team and talked us through the whole process. They had the benefit, they had a couple things that we didn't. Number one, their set was smaller. And number two, they were able to, design their whole system in concert with the production design, with the actual set
Oh,
build.
sure.
And our set build was already well underway. And the last thing that people were really worried about is that where they built the set is a place called Manatee Bay. Supposedly Manatee is a First Nations word that means something like the windy place.
Great. Heard, Jeff.
So there was that as well. So anyway, but they did still, come up with like a rough design for that idea and a rough budget number. And the line producer looked at that budget number and said, I'm sorry, no, that is not what we're going to do.
But I got Dion on the phone. I know Bob did that for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, all the like Western scene. I remember seeing a behind the scenes photo, and they just they grade it. Do the same thing, the half gray or gray, whatever, the whole top of it.
Yeah. I'll do it one day. It would have been, yeah. Anyway, it would have been good, but honestly, as well, because we had like all that rooftop action, like I think in the end it was for the best. But so we had to, again, this was like in talking with visual effects about how best to sell this and what they could do. And obviously it's like, you always want to be controlling the light that's hitting the people. But in this case, in this scene, there's a lot of people and they're running down an entire massive street. And so, yeah, so we did what we could, which I think at its largest scale, and we also had 2 units shooting there as well sometimes. So at its biggest scale, I think we had 3 40x60s on construction cranes, just trying to take the curse off of the main action area.
Right. And try to keep it
there
all,
was
like overcasty looking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And looking like it was actually snowing. And there was one terrible time, which of course, was my nightmare, and it did happen, which was it was incredibly sunny and incredibly windy. So then we couldn't, so then the cranes have to land, and we waited. We had to wait. And it was one of the hardest, most stressful moments for me of the entire shoot, because you literally have like 100 dressed, infected stunt people
uncomfortable
there. They're ready to go. Like the AD is just, looking at you hard.
Yeah, right. And, it's like it's literally your fault. Like
but again, it's like it's always about having a supportive team. And and Mark Mylod was like, it doesn't make sense if we shoot this, because we'll just have to reshoot it because it won't be right. And Craig knew that, and our producer Cece O'Connor knew that, and so we did wait. And we tried to shoot inserts and little things that we could control so that we weren't all just standing around looking at the sun. But we definitely, but I think as far as like a 24-day schedule of main unit photography, like to have one day where you lose, I don't know how much time we lost that day, maybe 2-3 hours, something that feels,
that's still a chunk.
In the moment, it feels awful. It just feels like Jesus Christ. But but that it could have been worse, basically. It could have been worse.
Yeah. So I'm sure Crafty loved that 3-hour chunk. We don't have any more fruit snacks.
Yeah. That was a day we had the dogs that day, so we were trying to like shoot little dog inserts and see what the dogs could do, and that's how we spent the time. But yeah,
you actually that just reminded me of something. In episode 4, I had a note here that you a lot of really great inserts.
Yes, there are a lot of great inserts. So yeah, you want to know about the inserts?
Yeah.
So Greg writes in a lot of the inserts because the details of the world and the texture of the world, it's very important. And so I think something that they learned on season one was about how, the shooting of inserts, I think they had to go back and do a lot of that work. And so part of the thinking with having, a fairly dedicated second unit, they weren't totally full time, they weren't shooting every day, but we had them a lot. We would have like, I think I was asking the AD because I couldn't remember. Like, I think, for example, for episode 2, we shot for 24 days, they shot for 12. And episode 4 was I'm sure less
Wait,
than that.
insert
Because we didn't
shot for
have
12?
So this is the second unit, right? And the second unit is not just doing inserts, but
Sure.
they are also doing inserts.
Right.
So that's so like, for example, like episode 4, I'm sure I don't know. Did you notice there's like a little insert of the caterpillar? Did you see that in the record store?
Oh,
in the guitar
yeah,
place?
sure, yeah.
So that was a day where supposedly they had, I mean, I wasn't there in the second unit, but yeah, they got in because Kate was like, oh, I really think it would be beautiful if, this place had like this caterpillar. And so they got in all these caterpillars. And
Caterpillar Wrangler.
Caterpillars. Yeah. They had like a morning of caterpillar shooting or whatever.
Second unit's the best unit. It's the most fun. I've only got to do it twice, and I'm like, I would do that forever.
The crew loved that day. Actually, I heard about Caterpillar Day for a while, but they shot in episode 2. They shot so much of the horde action work for us,
Sure.
And loads of stuff that doesn't involve main unit actors. Is them. So yeah, I definitely want to shout out JP Pass, who was the DP, and Mads Manson was the director, and Mark and I had to, I mean, basically that whole sequence, right? That's prevised. It's storyboard, and then we break it up and we say who gets what and when, and we talk through the shots and how we think they should be done and all the stuff. And to be honest, because we were often shooting in tandem on the Jackson backlot, it was easy for us to, obviously have their image and, be able to talk to them and all that stuff. And then we combined the units when we did, like, for example, when the horde first comes around the corner and Maria's up top and Tommy's down below, we just had them join us. So they did the rooftop work. They were up there with Maria doing the rooftop stuff, and we had our 3 cameras down in the street with Tommy and the horde. And so we were able to just shoot, a lot of that all as one, which was great. Yeah. Well, listen, it was so great to talk to you. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, of course. It's very exciting.
Yeah,
it was crazy. I was looking at the Instagram, and it's like it was 2 years ago. I felt like it was like a couple months, but
no, I know.
Television shows worth.
Yeah, I know.
Well,
wild.
Stay in touch. I mean, when the show when I finally get to see 7, I'll let you know how many tears.
Oh yes, yeah. Please do.
Yeah. All right. Well, have a good night, and thanks again.
Thank you, Kenny. My pleasure. Nice to see you.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Frame and Reference is an Albot production, produced and edited by me, Kenny McMillan. If you'd like to support the podcast directly, you can do so by going to frameandrefpod.com and clicking on the Patreon button. It's always appreciated, and as always, thanks for listening.